This is going to be your year to get your first ever brand deal. And who knows, maybe even your first several brand deals and make your first $1,000 as an influencer. I know you can do it. You clicked on this video, you feel driven, and you can make it happen. Fun fact, I actually got my first ever YouTube brand deal when I had just around 2,500 subscribers. And I got paid around $700 for it. Since then, brand deals have become an increasingly significant part of my business's income. And it's seriously such a pleasure to get to work with brands that I would have been recommending to my friends and to my viewers, even if they weren't paying me. So I want to teach you how to do the same. Because for many of us creators, it means getting paid to make the content that we honestly probably would have made anyway. But here's the thing, I'm not just going to show you how to start pitching brands, which is pretty typical in videos like this, and while it is an important part of the journey, the honest thing is, for many of us more established creators, that's not how we're getting the majority of our brand deals. The real business is about getting brands to come to you. And if you want to know how you can start making that happen, you're gonna have to watch to the end of the video. By the way, thanks to Dash Hudson for sponsoring this video. More on them later. This kind of goes without saying, but if you want to start working with brands, you need to have an audience to share those brands with. How do you grow an audience on social media? Well, luckily for you, I've spent the last 3 years making hundreds of YouTube videos on that exact topic. So you can check out all of those free resources if you want to. But it all basically boils down to finding your purpose and posting consistently. You need to have a reason for your content. It can be as simple as entertainment or providing inspiration, but there needs to be a reason for people to follow you. And you need to post consistently. This doesn't have to mean every day or multiple times a day, but you can't post every so often and then ghost your audience for months and expect to see growth from that. If you want to work with brands, what brands are looking for is an engaged and loyal following that trusts you and the recommendations that you make. They're not necessarily looking for a really large audience, though that definitely does help you in the long term, but they want an audience that's engaged, that cares about you, and will actually, click on those link stickers that you share. And the way to build an audience like that is through having a true purpose behind your content, having a clear brand, and posting consistently. So let's say you've found your purpose and you've been posting consistently and slowly but steadily growing your audience, and now you're thinking about starting to work with brands. There's a very important intermediate step that you need to consider, which is learning how to understand your analytics. You need to figure out what your typical content performance looks like in terms of reach and engagement. And it's also important for you to understand what the industry standards are, what other creators in your niche are typically seeing in terms of reach and engagement, so you can understand from a brand's perspective what you're able to offer. This is the kind of information that's going to be so important when you actually start communicating with brands, because they're going to be looking for stuff like your typical reach, your typical engagement rate, and all of those important pieces. So you want to make sure that you know them like the back of your hand first. The best way for you to get familiar with these stats is by using the sponsor of today's video, Dash Hudson. Whether you're a content creator or a social media manager, Dash Hudson is the perfect platform for visually analyzing your social media insights across different platforms. You can create custom dashboards to monitor the stats that are most important to you, and you can see at a glance how your recent content measures up. And Dash Hudson's new social listening tools further enhance your ability to keep a pulse on the conversations and trends happening in your niche.
Traditional social listening tools tend to be text-based, but Dash Hudson is unique because you can go beyond words to surface video, trends, and how creators in the community are talking about you to truly understand the landscape around you and let that guide the content creation process for your brand.
Plus, you can create easy to understand visual analytics reports to help you interpret your own insights and also to help you explain your own insights to potential brand partners. You can get a 14-day free trial of Dash Hudson for yourself using the link in my description. Thanks again, Dash Hudson, for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so with some slow and steady audience growth in place and some good understanding of your own analytics, it's time for you to take on the next step of working with brands, which is creating your very own media kit. In case you're not familiar, a media kit is basically a document that you put together that summarizes who your audience is, who you are, and some of your social stats, plus prices for your potential collaboration offerings. I think the best way to explain this is just to take you behind the scenes on my own personal media kit so you can see how I've put it together and even show you my prices. So this is the first page of my media kit. Obviously it has my name and then the date at the top, and I've also included some photos that I think represent my brand. Obviously you can see me creating content here, both on my phone and on my camera horizontally for YouTube, and then just a cute picture of me in my van working on my laptop. So I feel like this nicely represents the content creation side, but also the kind of like travel digital nomad side. Underneath the images, I get into a brief explanation of who I am, like super short, just a few sentences. I'm a YouTube creator and a social media marketing expert. And then I talk about how my mission is to inspire growing creators by sharing my journey. And immediately below that, I dive right into who my audience is. I think this is super important because when it comes to a brand wanting to work with you, like essentially they're wanting to work with you because they want to reach your audience, right? So it's very important that you make it clear right off the hop who that audience is. Like, who does the brand have the opportunity to reach by working with you? And then I just have like some very brief demographic details. So the majority of my followers are women aged 18 to 35, mostly based in the US. And that's information that I've personally gathered from like my YouTube analytics, my Instagram analytics, and just kind of collated it in a very brief, straight to the point way. All right, let's move on to the next page. This is where we get into the interesting stuff. So you can see I've organized this in columns. On the left-hand side, I have my packages, including pricing and some information about what's included. And then on the right-hand side, I have my social stats. These are not even like exactly up to date because it's changing all of the time, but I try to update my media kit once a month. You can see I don't just include the straight up number of followers that I have on each platform because I honestly don't even think that's the most important stat. I also include how often I'm posting there, what my typical reach is. So on YouTube, that means like my average views within the first week. And then on Instagram, you know, I've represented that in my story views, like that kind of thing. And then I've also included engagement rates, my view duration on YouTube. So it kind of gives a more full picture of the kind of reach and engagement a brand can expect from working with me. And again, these are stats that I've gathered from YouTube Studio, from Instagram Insights, and then I've just represented them here in a more straightforward way. Sometimes I get questions like, shouldn't you include screenshots to prove that it's like real? And I honestly think that's a pretty silly line of reasoning because you can really easily doctor screenshots. Like I could take a YouTube Studio screenshot and then just Photoshop it to change the numbers. But on top of that, like I don't want to work with a brand that suspects me of misrepresenting my numbers. Like if a brand really doesn't believe my media kit, it's like, well, you obviously don't trust me and probably don't want to work with me. Plus, ultimately misrepresenting your numbers in your media kit is going to do you more harm than good, because if you lead a brand to believe they're going to get way more reach than they actually will, when you do partner with them and create the content, they're going to be disappointed by the results and they're not going to want to work with you in the future. So it's much better to just be honest with your numbers. So that's pretty straightforward. Gather your insights and list it in a way that is easy to read. Then on the left-hand side, I have my various packages, which right now, these are pretty much the main ways that I work with brands. So I feel like this speaks for itself. Your numbers are going to be your numbers. And yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in how to price yourself. As an influencer, I'm honestly still figuring it out. Okay, the next page, these are case studies and content examples from past brand deals I've done. So this is something that I've added to my media kit relatively recently after I've, done enough brand deals to have some examples. So I think this is really good because it gives brands a sense of what we could achieve by working together, because my average reach or average engagement on non-sponsored content might not be representative of my average reach or engagement on sponsored content. So I think it's really great to have a little bit of a portfolio if you can. So you can see I've just included essentially the reach, the click-through rate, the sales I've generated, that kind of thing. So I feel like that's helpful to have. And on the next page, this is kind of bonus depending on whether or not it's relevant to you, but I have a mini media kit within my larger media kit for my podcast. So again, pricing, stats, that sort of thing. And on the final page, I have a few other details. I include some info about usage rights and exclusivity and timelines and revisions and what my typical policies around those are. I didn't used to do this, and I found that often brands would just kind of sneakily slip into the contract that exclusivity and usage rights would be included. And I'd be like, actually, I charge extra for that. So I started putting it in my media kit so they would get a heads up ahead of time that I would be expecting that. They still sometimes will slip it into the contract anyway, but it's important to have this information there so you can kind of set a precedent from the beginning. Hey, look, I'm gonna charge for these things. If you want to create a media kit literally exactly like this, I just recently released my Canva template that you can buy on my website, and it's very easy to edit, put in your own images, put in your own stats, and you can have like the exact same result that I have here. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave the link in the description. Now that you have these great tools in place, you've got your media kit in order, you understand your analytics, it's time for you to start actually working with brands. As an influencer, you basically have two main ways of approaching this. One is reaching out to or pitching brands, and the other is getting brands to reach out or pitch to you. Now, I feel like a lot of these videos go over the first option because it's easy to see how that's within your control, right? You can do your research, find contacts to send emails to, write the best pitch possible, do as many follow-ups as you can. You can see how those are actions you can take to actually pitch a brand and secure a brand deal. But this other side of things, this area where you get brands to come to you, is much more elusive, and it's the part of being an influencer that really intimidated me at first. When I had a smaller audience and I was not getting that many brand deal opportunities, I was like, how do all these creators have these magical emails ending up in their inbox asking them to work together? So let's talk about what actions you can actually take to end up in this second scenario where you can get brands reaching out to you. The first and most obvious method is just growing your audience, and I mean, I think that we all know that, right? The more well-known you become across different platforms, the more likely it is that a brand partnerships rep might find you. But that is not the only way to do this. So here's a few tips that you can implement no matter your audience size to kind of get on the radar of brands that might want to work with you. The first thing you can do is optimize your bios or about pages to include lots of great keywords that describe you and your audience. Essentially, you're using the power of SEO so that you can get your social accounts in front of potential brand managers. You just have to put yourself in the shoes of a potential brand partnerships manager who is looking for new influencers to work with. They might go to Instagram or YouTube or whatever and start searching for the kind of creator that they think their target customers might be following. So think about how you might be able to communicate who your audience is in the form of a few choice keywords in your bio. So for example, for me, I might use words like female content creator or social media manager. These are the kinds of people that the brands I work with tend to want to reach. But maybe for you, it's like stay-at-home moms or gardeners or vegans or gym rats, I don't know. It all depends on who you're trying to reach and who the brands you want to work with are trying to reach. So you can use the power of SEO optimization on your social profiles, but you can actually go above and beyond that. The second tip I want to share with you is creating a blog or a website and using SEO on that platform to your advantage as well. Picture this, brand managers might also be just searching Google to try to find influencers to work with, right? Not just Instagram or YouTube or whatever. So it would be helpful for you to have a website or a blog where they can find you. This is also a really great place to present yourself in a professional way through your about page. You can even upload your media kit there, show portfolio examples of other content you've made. Like, I just think it's really helpful to have a website if you are wanting to become a professional creator, because it's a great place for brands to find you, and it's a great place to kind of organize all of your different content across platforms for your audience to find too. My third tip is to start collaborating, connecting with other creators and getting your name out there through other people's platforms as well. The easiest way to do this is to start getting interviewed on podcasts or get quoted in other people's blog posts. This is basically just a helpful way to get your name in front of more eyeballs, right? Like, some of the people out in that audience might just be looking for an influencer like you to do a partnership with the brand that they work at. Also, if you can get links back to your website in other people's podcast show notes or in other people's blog posts, that'll just kind of help with the SEO for your website as well and just make you more discoverable in general. Okay, so those are some tips for making yourself more discoverable to brands. But once brands discover you, you want to make sure that you've got some good examples in place that prove to them that you would be a good creator to work with. This is where building up a good portfolio comes into play. You really want to consider what kind of content you can make that will live on your Instagram page or on your YouTube channel that represents the kind of content you could make if you were working with a brand. That way, when one of these potential partnerships reps ends up on your page, they can see, oh yeah, like she's really good at making this kind of content. I think she'd be great at making content for us. And here's a little piece of advice. It's a great way to start slowly integrating more product recommendations or stuff that like feels like brand deals, so your audience starts to get used to it. So someday when you do your first ever brand deal, it won't be so jarring that you're like all of a sudden talking about something branded. Another pro tip here, if you have affiliate links for stuff, this is a really great way to kind of work two angles at once. You can build up your portfolio of like what potential brand deal content might look like, and you can actually make a little bit of money off of it if your kind of pretend brand deal content is for stuff you have affiliate links for. Obviously you got to disclose if it's an affiliate link, like we know the drill, we have to be following FTC and stuff like that, but this is an opportunity for you to practice creating more kind of branded feeling content and still make a little bit of money off of it. And what's really great about this strategy is if you're organized and you track your stats a little bit, you could actually start building up some really good examples to put in that case study section of your media kit. If you create trackable affiliate links for yourself using something like Genius Link, for instance, that's what I like to use, you can throw your Amazon affiliate links in there and then, you know, create some pretend sponsored posts or whatever for practice. And then you can track how many clicks your affiliate links get, and then you'd be able to show a brand, hey, when I created this reel, my affiliate link for the product I mentioned got 100 clicks, you know. That's a really great example of my work. So I really recommend trying that method just to get into the practice of creating brand deal style content. You'll build up some stats and case studies for yourself, and your audience will get used to seeing that kind of content from you. Okay, my friend, you've got this. Now is your time to go out and get those paid brand deals. Brand deals are an awesome source of income, but when it comes to being a full-time content creator, it's important that you diversify your income a bit by developing several different income streams. So then if you see a few less brand deals one month, it doesn't totally change your income. So if you want to learn about my various streams of income and how my business brings in on average $30,000 a month in revenue, then you're going to want to check out this video next where I go into detail about all of it. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having adventures and following your dreams, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.